give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good. His mercy is everlasting, and his truth endures through all generations. What a pleasure it is to be here to share with the Greater Shield of Faith Church family, and with my good friend, my dear friend and brother, Bishop James Jennings. And it is just a joy to be here and to share in this, the 15th anniversary of the Greater Shield of Faith Church. And listen, you all have been just a beckoning light in the community, and you have blessed so many people. And Bishop, you have touched so many hearts. And I know, because I'm one of them, you've blessed my life, and I'm grateful to God for you, grateful for the friendship we share, and grateful for this wonderful church family. And I'm celebrating with you these 15 years. We are blessed to be able to come and to share these words of the Lord. It's always such a privilege to speak on behalf of our Savior. And so now I want to invite your attention to the book of 2 Kings, the book of 2 Kings, the 6th chapter and the 17th verse. 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 17. You'll find these words recorded. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountains was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. And from this, I want to talk from this subject, seeing through the eyes of faith. Seeing through the eyes of faith. Bless you today. Are you viewing life through the lenses of faith, or are you looking at life through the lens of fear? This is important for us to discuss because large numbers of people are in fact looking at life through a lens of fear. They're allowing fear to color every event. They're allowing fear to determine what it is that they see and how they interpret it. And maybe you among them, my brother or my sister, and you've been trying to make the best of life. You've been doing your best to live life at a meaningful level, only to discover that rather than seeing the good in life, all you could see is the bad. Rather than seeing ways for things to work out, all you can see is failure and dismay. And this is tragic for any of us when we allow fear to call the shots in our lives. When we allow fear to dominate the scene and to control us in one way or another. And one of the things that the Bible is particularly clear on is that if there is fear in our lives, it is not given to us by God. For the scripture says boldly that God had not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So if there is fear in our lives, we must rest assured that it does not come from God. And see, what I wanted you to know today is that we could turn this around. We could could change our lives for the better if we only look through the lens of faith, see through the eyes of faith rather than fear. Oh, it'll make all the difference in the world. Yes, it will. This amazing text of Scripture helps us to understand this, because now it is that there is warfare between Israel and Syria. And the Syrian guard, along with their king, Ben-Hadad, is developing strategy. They are engaged in their military strategy in order to overthrow the household of Israel and their king, Jehoram. But as things would have it, every time they had developed a strategy to get the upper hand on Israel, it appeared that Israel got word somehow, that somehow their intelligence had been divulged, and that Israel was able to guard themselves against the strategy of the Syrians. Over and over they would try, but every time Israel was on the upper hand. They would set camp in order to pounce upon Israel at a certain intersection, and when Israel was to come that way, but before Israel would get there, they would turn and go another way, as if they knew of the plots and plans of the Syrians. And so by this time, the Syrian king had become quite frustrated and disturbed, and thus called his top brass together. And then in a meeting with the top brass, the king said that evidently there's a mole somewhere, that there's somebody, a double agent, if you will, that is divulging the intelligence of our military strategies to the Israelites. And thus the king was calling for them and saying, come forth, and wanted them to stand and to speak up so that he could punish them accordingly. But one of the king's servants tapped the king and says, King, live forever, but there's no mole. Your top brass is loyal to you. He said the challenge, the problem that you're having has nothing to do with anything internally. The problem that you are having is that there's a man of God in Israel. And that man of God consults with Yahweh. And Yahweh gives him the intelligence of your military forces. Says, as a matter of fact, that man of God knows what goes on in your bedchamber. And when he informs the king of Israel, they are able to thwart any plans that you may have. So the king of Syria then said, bring this man to me. Capture this prophet and bring him to me, dead or alive. Thus he ordered soldiers to go to the little town called Dothan, where the prophet of God Elisha was known to dwell. And thus this military force with horses and chariots, with swords and shields, went and surrounded this small town of Dothan. And when they surrounded this town, and they were gathered in the mountains and in the valleys, and they surrounded this entire city, the morning came. When the morning arrived, Elisha's adjutant, his assistant, one of his understudies, got up early that morning and stepped out onto the porch of the house and yawned, if you will. But then upon opening his eyes, he looked and he saw all of these Syrian soldiers surrounding the entire city of Dothan. This young man almost fell apart. He was captured with fear. His legs were trembling. His knees were knocking. He was so in fear. But then he turns and he goes back into the house and he wakes up the prophet of God, Elisha, and tells him, you must come, hurry, and see what's going on. And Elisha gets up gingerly and he walks patiently to the door and he looks out. And his words to the young man was, they that are with us are more than they that are with them. And then that's when the prophet prayed the words of our text. He said to the Lord, open this young man's eyes so that he may see. And listen, this is the challenge for us today. This is the very issue that we are forced to deal with all the time. We can see, but the question is, do we see through eyes of faith or eyes of fear? The reason that Elisha prayed for this young man that his eyes would be opened is because he needed more than just eyesight. He needed insight. He needed more than just his natural eyes to see. He needed another sense. He needed a sixth sense, if you will. He needed to be able to see through the eyes of faith. And oh, that's my challenge to you. That's my challenge to this church family. That is my challenge to all of the people of God, to see through the eyes of faith. Oh, what a difference. What a difference that would make if we could see through the eyes of faith. Well, what are the benefits of seeing through the eyes of faith? Well, the first thing is this, that if we could see through the eyes of faith, it will allow us to see beyond what is into what is possible. You know, it allows us to see beyond what is and to peek over into what's possible. You see, this young man, you know, he gets up early in the morning and he looks, and when he beholds the army of the Syrians all around, he's stricken with fear even the more. And it's amazing that this young man was able to look and to see what was happening and to see those soldiers, to see possibly their shields and swords glistening in the rising sun. He was able to see the horses and to see the chariots. And see, this becomes the challenge for us. Often we can see what's against us, but we can't see what we've got going for us. You know, my brothers and sisters, this is so amazing because the struggle with many of us, even in 2020, is that we can see the problem, but we can't see the answer. Yeah. We can see the sickness, but we can't see the healing. You know, we can see the door that slams in our face, but we can't see the door that opens when one door slams. I'm trying to say to somebody that if you could see through the eyes of faith, you could see that every time something comes against you, there's open doors of possibilities laid out for you. Oh, this should challenge somebody to get up from where you are right now. Yeah, don't let fear paralyze you. Don't you dare allow fear to halt you in your tracks when there's a whole lot more to you than just that. When you see through the eyes of faith, you could see open doors of possibility. You could see what God is yet to do on your behalf. That's what it's all about. Seeing through eyes of faith. But not only does it allow us to see into possibilities, but seeing through the eyes of faith also permits us to move beyond our emotions into a solid trust in God. Yeah, beyond emotions. I know we're all emotional creatures, aren't we? We always talk about how we feel about things. And that was the challenge with the young man in the text. He looked and he saw the Syrian armies surrounding Dothan. And he went into an emotional fit. Fear sent him on an emotional roller coaster with standing there trembling with his knees knocking. And you know how it is. If I'm in fear, then you believe everybody ought to be in fear. If my knees are knocking, then everybody's knees ought to be knocking. If I'm scared and if I'm afraid, then everybody ought to be responding in the same kind of way. That's why he was so bothered when Elisha gets up and Elisha looks and instead of Elisha responding emotionally the same way he did, Elijah is smooth and steady. Yeah. He's not responding the same way the young man did in fear, but he's cool, calm, and collected. Yeah, you see, it makes a difference. It makes a difference when you can see through the eyes of faith. Then you don't have to get on that emotional roller coaster. You don't have to get angry and bitter and lose your temper and cuss somebody out. You don't have to get somebody told. You don't have to get even with somebody. You can get beyond your emotions and get into some solid trust in God. You see, the reason that Elisha was able to look at this same set of circumstances and respond so differently emotionally is because he was able to view it through the eyes of faith. Hallelujah. That's my challenge to you today, my brothers and sisters. See through the eyes of faith. Get beyond your emotions and put your trust in God. Then finally, seeing through the eyes of faith also allows us to rest on the promise that God takes care of God's own. That God is committed. That's what this passage says, that God is committed to taking care of God's own. Somebody needs to know that today. You see, when you see through the eyes of faith rather than fear, then you can relax in the promise that God will take care of you. You see, this was the difference. See, when the prophet Elisha came and looked and he saw the same circumstances the young man had seen, he was able to see beyond what he saw. Help me preach. He was able to see beyond what he saw. He was able to see that there were another whole host of angels that were surrounding the mountains. And thus the man of God was able to say, they that are for us are more than they that are against us. Listen, my brothers and sisters, when we see through the eyes of faith, then we can know know that God will take care of us. You know, here we are in the middle of a pandemic. Here we are in the middle of political turmoil. Here we are in an environment where racism is raising its ugly head like back in the 50s and 60s and on before that. Stuff we thought we had settled more than a half century ago. Here we are wrestling with it again. But I need somebody to see through the eyes of faith. Don't you panic. Ain't no need in you trembling now. There's no need for your knees to be knocking. Don't look at this in fear. Look at it in faith. And know that the same God that brought us this far, the same God that watched over us in the years gone by, the same God that made a way out of no way, he's still watching over us. I say he's still caring for us. And you see, so what I wanted to challenge somebody with today is put your hand in God's hand. Yeah, and keep on believing and keep on trusting. Yeah, and square your shoulders, hold your head up high. You a child of God. And what I want you to understand is that God has promised I'll never leave you and I sure won't forsake you. Do I have anybody here that's got that testimony that the Lord will, he'll cover you, he'll keep you, he'll walk beside you, he'll hold your hand, and he'll guide your feet. You see, when the prophet prayed that prayer, he said, Lord, open his eyes, let him see that there are more for us than there are against us. Open his eyes and let him see that there are angels assigned to walk along beside us. I'm out of here, y'all, but I just wanted to tell you what happened in the text. You see, the angels of the Lord, they covered the prophet of God. When the young man looked a second time, he was able to see chariots of fire, horses, and angels that have come to the rescue. What somebody needs to know is we serve a God that takes care of his own. And I wanted to close by saying, be not dismayed, whatever betide, God will take care of you. Beneath his wings of love abide. God will take care of you no matter what may be the test. God will take care of you. Lean weary one upon his breast. God will take care of you through every day, all of the way. God will take care of you. Y'all be good. Y'all be kind. Take care of yourselves. But don't worry. I said don't worry, because God got angels stationed all around. It may look dark. Burdens may be heavy. Friends may be few. Valleys may get low. Mountains may get high. But I've come to tell you, God will. I said, God will. He'll sure take care of you. Yes, he will. I say, yes, he will. Yes, he will. He'll take care of you. The reason I know he will, because he sent Jesus all the way from heaven down. He came into this world for you and me. But one Friday, he died on a hill called Calvary, laid in a borrowed tomb all night Friday, all day Saturday, all night Saturday night, but Sunday morning he got up in power. Got up in power, so I'm not afraid, I'm not worried, I refuse to quit, I refuse to give up, I'm holding on, I'm trusting God, I'm living by faith, I'm seeing world and seeing things around me through the eyes of faith. So look here, greater shield of faith. Keep on marching, keep on believing, keep on trusting, keep on singing, keep on shouting, keep on praising the Lord, keep on marching. I said keep on going, keep on keeping on, because one of these days you will hear the Lord say, well done, my good and faithful servant. Well done. Well done.